Hello and welcome. Emerging technology is likely to change the way we work, the way we engage, and the way we deliver value to maybe the enterprises we work with or customers we deal with. But how is that going to actually get implemented, and how is that going to play out in your lives, whether you're a manager or whether you're a consumer? Well, to talk about that, I'm joined by someone who's best placed to look at the world beyond, and that's Ian Khan, a futurist, and who's also worked on a bunch of startups of his own in the past and therefore has seen the world from all sides. Ian, thank you very much for being with us.
It's my pleasure to be here.
So it's always a very broad brush thing to start with, right? So when you say, or when someone asks you, what is the future of technology looking like? And let me supplement to that by asking, how am I going to, as a consumer or a user or a manager, going to start feeling these changes or the emerging tech changes, and how is it going to affect my life?
That's a great question. Emerging technology, in my opinion, is not something that will happen tomorrow or 5 years from now. If we look at our lives today in any modern civilized part of the world, whether it's a developing nation, it's a third world, or one of the developed nations, technology is everywhere. Take a look at your smartphone. From Africa to Amsterdam, everybody has a smartphone, and our lives are completely dictated by this revolutionary thing that happened to us maybe 10, 12 years ago. And so smartphones haven't been there for too long. And that's just a very small example to show that something so small could have such a revolutionary effect on us, and how fast that kind of grew to where we are right now. So in many ways, we don't have to go anywhere far. We have to look at our lives today and see what is technology doing for us today, and try and understand that what could be the future. And there's so many ways to doing that. You can study companies in a formal way, you can look at products around us, but you could also look at how services are delivered, how organizations are making e-commerce possible, the rise of Airbnb, the rise of Uber as a disruptor to the taxi industry. There's so many examples right where we are right now that will help us understand the trend that is shaping the world right now and where potentially it could go.
Right. So in some ways, the future is also defined or being defined by the disruptors and the way they're delivering services to customers. Because customers' expectations are now changing, and they're now expecting something bigger and better and more sophisticated than ever before, despite the fact that they may still be in the middle income bracket and using only a middle income smartphone.
Absolutely. So customers are definitely, the technology has moved from being in the lab where back in the day people would do experiments and they would build computers and they would use that. It's gone beyond that. And right now technology is in the hands of 3-year-olds who are giving ideas to companies that can start an education app and start that app and serve maybe thousands of 3-year-olds that have a need to learn something, and parents will buy those apps. I have a 3-year-old and I know exactly what I'm talking about. So consumers are dictating a lot around one side of tech, where the trend goes and what's happening. But from a workplace perspective as well, companies are trying to find out better ways of being more efficient, saving more money, saving more cost, so that they can have more impact, they can create more value, they can have more happy employees, and they can have happiness and productivity around the company. The days are gone from the 9 to 5, and today we're living in the era of the 4-hour work week in many parts of the world.
And you feel these are connected, the emerging technology trends and the way people would like to define their workspaces and their work lives?
I think so. I think there's a connection, but then there's also a disconnect. Now the connection is because in certain communities, certain companies, or certain, let's say, places where technology is very common, the expectation is that when is the next version coming out? When is the next bigger thing coming out? But I think in some places we're still struggling with even the adoption of a basic technology such as cloud, which is not new. And I see a lot of different industries, accounting, manufacturing, still struggling with the fact that they are not on the cloud, they are not digital, and they're still asking the question, why should we do this? And getting them to understand this is the problem right now. So we have a huge range of people across the world in terms of companies who need to understand technology and see what to do with it. So trends, of course, are shaping what we do as well. But I wouldn't say the trends are dictating everything in the market. There's a basic market that's still struggling, and there's an advanced market that needs the revolutionary things of tomorrow.
Right, and that's interesting. So when we look at it from, let's say, an India point of view, how do you see the horizon? I mean, and when I say India, I mean there is a lot of capability in India today, maybe housed within global capability centers, which is essentially outfits that are linked or tethered to a mothership, which could be a large retail store in America, or a financial giant in Europe. And how could all of this impact them positively or otherwise in the future or the near future?
So I would say that India has always been on a path of leading something or the other, and I won't go back 50 and thousands of years, but really recently GCC's Global Capacity Centers, 20 or 30-year-old industry, but it has dramatically changed the way how global companies operate. India has a strong advantage when it comes to the education levels of people who work within companies here, within GCCs or other industries in general. Their excellent command on English, their ability to connect different things. And I think that's one of the biggest achievements or biggest advantages that India has. Indian population is expected to exceed that of China by 2025. Some experts suggest that, and it will stay that way for the rest of the century. So that's a big thing. With that much amount of human capital available, and the number of graduates that are passing out from universities and coming into the workforce, I think the potential is unlimited. There's a tremendous amount of, I would say it's a gold mine of talent, first of all, that India is sitting on. Now, that has a few challenges as well. It's not only just a good thing, because now you've got to find them productive work, you've got to find them organizations and companies need to take those people in. So it's going to be a great balance between changing the definition of work, because there's a more focus on, as I mentioned, happiness, and more focus on work-life balance, but then also integrating these people into the workforce. So I think there's some advantages right there, low-hanging fruit, if you will. And that will have a dramatic impact on the global industries as well. Companies that are looking at India for this talent base and they want to outsource or they want to create GCCs to take over the back office work. So there's a lot of opportunity.
Right. So when you say back office, do you feel the perception is that the value or the value add is still lower or much lower? Or do you see that changing, and is that a journey, or is that a journey that we still have to traverse?
If you look at some of the top global CEOs in the world, I can say they're from Indian descent. You look at Microsoft, you look at Pepsi, and you look at Google. And this is becoming very common now that somebody from an Indian origin is now the CEO of a mega trillion-dollar company. That didn't happen 10 years ago. And that's an indicator. That's an indicator of the talent that India has been able to export. Now, in addition to these glorious CEOs, there's thousands and millions of Indians who perform crucial tasks in the rest of the world, right? So we're talking about rest of the world. In India alone itself, it's the same talent. And I think we're sitting on a huge potential of innovating right here. And instead of saying, hey, this product was invented in Silicon Valley or in London or in Singapore, that is happening right now. And you see that with some emerging platforms that have just recently happened in terms of, if you even look at apps, there's one that comes to mind is Beju's for education. It has grown in scale to a tremendous amount, and they're serving a lot of students right now. And that is a product grown in India, a very small example. And so I really believe the capabilities are here, but we need to create the right environment to foster that growth, to give that challenge to graduates who are coming out of universities and say, hey, you can actually create a startup. And I see that changing. 10, 15 years ago, that didn't exist. Nobody wanted a startup. But now the trend is changing.
Right. Last question. So when you look ahead, what are the sort of mega trends that you're looking at a very global level, which you think can benefit or not benefit, I mean, and maybe fundamentally disrupt people who are not ready for it?
I believe some of the trends literally that are being shaped or that are shaping the world are the simplification of technology. We need to simplify the complexity that we've always had around technology, because now it has changed hands from technical people to an everyday consumer who is using technology and dictating what should be the next iteration of that. So I think simplification of complexity is something that I really, really support, and we should focus more on that. I think there's an opportunity to grow talent and to feed talent, whether it's funding, it's opportunity, it's connecting them with other companies where they can partner up and do things that they would ordinarily not do. I think there's a huge opportunity there. In terms of technology trends, there will always be something new, whether it's blockchain, it's artificial intelligence, it's the Internet of Things. I think these trends will always keep on happening as people think of different ideas, different ways of solving a problem. And that problem-solving approach is something that can propel everybody, not just in India, but across the world, to the next step, which is to create more value, to create more a more balanced world, if you will, whether it's the work-life balance or any other balance. I think there's these things we need to focus upon.
And problem-solving approach is a good way to sort of highlight what you've been saying. Ian, Khan, thank you so much for speaking with us.
You're very welcome. Thank you.